Hey there, welcome back. In this video, we'll start the backend development for the application which I have shown in the previous video. So let's get started. So I'm in a particular folder. So let's first create a one folder. So I'm going to name this as something like DALI GAN AI. Okay. So in this, I'm going to create. So I'm going inside of this, and I'm going to create here the let's make here the server folder again. Okay, and in this, inside the server, I'm just going to initialize the package.json. Okay, so here, okay, so we have this package.json. So as usual, let's first install the dependencies. So here I'm just going to install the express and the .env. Okay, and let's set up the TypeScript too. So here, yep, TypeScript, and install the types for the Express and Node. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to open this in a VS. Here we are in the VS Code. So let me get the terminal. Okay, fine. And now I'm just going to create the simple initialize the I'm just going to create the tsconfig.json file. Okay, so this is the simple which you already know. So here, yep, so here, fine, I'm just going to change the one value which is like out directory. So I'm just going to keep that to the list thing. Okay, so just after this, we can clear all these things, but let them be. Okay, so here I'm just going to mention out directory as dist. Fine, so yep, and let's create the I wanted to create a new folder here, so let's make this as a source. Okay, and here again I want to mention the root directory as this. Fine, and now inside this I wanted to create a new file, which is the index.ts file. Okay, so let's do one thing. So yeah, let's create the file inside that, which I'm going to name this as index.ts. Okay, and let's quickly write the simple boilerplate thing. So here I'm just going to import the express and the express types response and the request type from express. Okay, so let's just install the app. Okay, so this is going to be of type express. So this is what I was talking about. So let me import this from express. Okay, fine, and here I'm just going to initialize the object of that, and here the port I'm going to make this as 8000. Okay, and let's have the just endpoint. Okay, so this we are going to write this request and response. Okay, so let's import this. So request and response. Okay, fine, so I'm just going to send the response here as like setup is done. Okay, fine, and I'm just going to listen on this above port. So I'm just listening on this port. Okay, so here I'm just going to log this server is listening on port this. Okay, fine, so now let's install the Nodeman and the concurrently, okay, to watch the fine changes and parallelly run multiple commands using the single script command. So I'm just installing this and the Nodeman, okay. So now going to our package.json, let's add the commands to build and start our server. Okay, so just here I'm just going to add the commands to build. So this is going to be compiler, TypeScript compiler. Okay, after this for starting, so we'll just give here node dist source index.js, okay, and dev. So this is where I'm just going to use the this concurrently and escape the strings and first build this, okay. So tsc and then watch for the changes, okay, and then now run the our server using the Nodeman, okay. So here fine, so yep, so these are the commands, fine. Now let's first so I'm just going to call this dev command, okay. So 1 second, fine. Here it's trying to listen here in server thing, but I have here, okay, let me change, tsconfig, but this is where I have exactly in the source folder, right? Okay, what's wrong then? Let me run this first build command. So okay, let's cancel this. So it has built for us source folder and index.js. So I'm just trying to do the same thing, dist source index.js. Just a second, hold on. Let me start this. Okay, so now it is listening, so let's check this out. So now hitting on this the endpoint, we should receive the response, setup is done, okay. So let's, and also before that so let's go to our browser, let me check this. Yep, so it's working fine. So now let's get started with our actual code base, okay. So first thing we are going to need the environment variables, as I mentioned in the previous video. One is the OpenAI key and the any MongoDB database URL and the Cloudinary. So it's just simple. If you wanted to use the other cloud, you can just go ahead, but I'm using the Cloudinary in this project. So you just go there and create an account. So immediately it's going to give you the Cloudinary app name and the API key and the secret, so you can get from there. So that's not a big deal. So first thing I wanted to set up those things. So here for validation, I'll be using the environment variables and schema validation. I'll be using this joy npm library, which is very popular, for schema and validation for our especially the JavaScript related code and TypeScript. Okay, so this is going to make our work easier and help us write validations properly. Okay, so this is I'm going to use. Okay, first thing, let me first configure the environment variable. So I have already noted down in my note section, so I'm just going to take there and just first I'm going to create this environment variables. Okay, so let me create a new file called .env. Okay, so let me take it from my notes section. So I'm just taking it here. So these are the values. Okay, so MongoDB URL, OpenAI key, and Cloudinary cloud name, and API key and secret. Okay, this will be as I told, MongoDB URL, you can create your local server and use that URL, or else you can use the Atlas any URL, and OpenAI key, just get that. And for Cloudinary details, just create an account, so you will be given the cloud name and the API key and secret. Okay, fine. So now this is fine. So now inside this thing, first thing I wanted to as I said, I wanted to set up some configuration for the validation for our environment variable. So for that, I'm just going to create here the new folder. So let's name that as config. So this is pretty standard to verify any configuration details. We will just create here the config folder, and let's create here config.ts file. Okay, so here config.ts file, and okay, so yep. And before even that, let's define types for our environment configuration. So for that too, I'm just going to create a new folder. Let's name this as a types. Okay, and I'm just going to create here just a file called the environment config dot ts. Fine. So now here just this already what it's going to be about. So I'm just going to name this as environment config. Okay, so this would have the properties of like database URL, which is again of type string, and I need the OpenAI key. Okay, so I need OpenAI key, so let me find. So this is again going to be string, all it's going to be string. Okay, and let's have the Cloudinary. So Cloudinary, it's going to have the name as Cloudinary name, as just I showed you the environment variables. Okay, that's just the type. Okay, fine. Then API key, so it's going to be string, and then API secret, which is again the string. So this is the type for our environment configuration. So I'm just going to export this type. Okay, fine. So now let's go back to the config file. So here first thing, so let's install the joy dependencies. So I'm just going to install this. Okay, so fine, so it's installed. So let's use that to first validate the things. Okay, so here and from let's have the .env configuration file address. Okay, so for that I'm just going to import the config from .env. So here import config, let's rename this as to something like cfg. Okay, from .env. Fine. So first here I'm just going to load the details from our .env section. So here it's going to be path, and I'm just going to path dot join and have the directory name. Okay, so fine, and it's going to be .env file. Okay, so fine, so this is the location. So fine, just upping two directories, and in that we have this .env file. Okay, first thing, let's create a environment variable schema. So this is pretty straightforward. If you go to the documentation, you will be able to get started quickly. So here, I'm naming this, so I'm just going to import joy. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to create an object. So here the keys for that is our environment variable. So first thing, the MongoDB URL. Okay, fine, so this is going to be of type string. Okay, and this is required. Okay, fine, and the if not provided, this is the message that we would be replying back. So here required, and this is just key, and I'm just going to reply back saying that provide MongoDB URL. Okay, fine, so this is for MongoDB URL. Similarly, we'll do the same for the other key. So here openai key, this is again going to be string, and this is also required. Okay, and the messages, it's going to be the same, just the message that will be showcasing is different. So here I'm just going to say provide openai key. Fine, so this is the for openai key, and similarly let's do for Cloudinary cloud name. So this is going to be again of type string, required, message, it's going to be same. So any dot required, so I'm just going to say here like provide Cloudinary cloud name. Okay, fine, so yep, so after this the Cloudinary API key, so I'm just going to just give the same thing just like we did for the above thing. So it's going to be string, and it will make this as required, and the messages, it's going to be same, any dot required a key, and the value is going to be provide Cloudinary API key. Okay, so just the pretty standard validation messages. Okay, fine, and the next thing is Cloudinary API secret. Okay, so this is going to be again string, and required, the messages, so key is going to be this, and the message that will be showcasing in case if it's not provided is provide Cloudinary API secret. Okay, fine, so these are the things of our schema, and after this I'm just going to call this fine. Yep, now from this let's destructure the environment variables, and if there are any, so this is how we are going to destructure. So value, so let's rename this to something like environment variables, and the error, so I'm just going to destructure from this. Okay, and the preference, so it's if errors, okay, label is going to be key. Okay, fine, I'm just going to validate this our process.env thing. Okay, fine, so this is how we are going to validate using this the schema which we have created above, and the file that env.key and the things. Okay, fine, so it's going to look for the key. Okay, fine. After this, if there is any error, so we'll just throw this error here. So if there is an error, I'm just going to throw error saying that environment setup error. Okay, so I'm just going to say something like environment setup error, and I'm just going to showcase the error message. Okay, so error dot message. Fine. So yep, if not, I'm just going to create one object of our environment config type, and I'm just going to load the values in that respective variables. Okay, so this is how. So config, and this is going to be of type environment config here. So the database URL, this is going to be MongoDB URL. Okay, and so next thing is openai key. So this is going to be openai key, and the Cloudinary. So here the name, so name it's going to be Cloudinary cloud name. So just the variables things which we have created above. So API key, and then the API secret. Okay, so now the object needed for us with the environment variables is done. So fine, I'm just going to wrap these things inside one function so that we can call that while we are starting this application. Okay, so let's quickly get this thing. So I export const, I'm just going to call this function as validate env, and it's not going to return anything. Fine, so here I'm just going to destructure for error if there are any. So environment schema dot preference, and errors. Okay, and the label is going to be key. Okay, so and we are going to just, I'm going to repeat the above code which I have just written, but I'm just wrapping inside one function. Okay, fine, and just here if there is any error, okay, error, I'm just going to use this the same. So fine, so this we can use it directly, and let's do the setup for our openai setup. So I'm just going to name this something like thing. Okay, I'm just going to name this as configuration. So here, so let's install this npm openai package. Okay, so I'm just going to install this and call in our create the configuration object. So just let's import this. Yep, so here let's create an object of this configuration. Okay, and I'm just going to pass in the API key. So API key, it's going to be config dot openai key. Okay, so I'm just going to export this thing. So I'm just going to import this and pass in the configuration object. Fine, so yep, so now the openai thing to call our respective APIs object is also ready. Similarly, I'm just going to do for Cloudinary setup. Okay, so here let's config this. So I'm just going to install the Cloudinary package. Okay, so here fine, so I'm just installing this. Okay, and let me import the version 2 from that library. So I'm just going to rename this as something like Cloudinary setup from this Cloudinary. Fine, so now let's config this. So here dot config, and pass in these three things. Cloud name, it's going to be config dot Cloudinary dot name, and the API key, so it's going to be config dot Cloudinary dot API key, and then the secret, so API secret, so config dot Cloudinary dot secret. Okay, fine. So now the setup are needed for us for the OpenAI, Cloudinary, and the environment variables validation and all. So we have configured here. So let's just a second. So I'm just going to export this Cloudinary variable to. Let's yep. So this is going to be the above thing. Fine. So now we have these all things, and only another thing pending is our checking the MongoDB connection. So let's just create a separate file inside this config itself. Okay, so I'm just creating a new file. I'm just naming this as something like db connect. Okay, here. So first let's install the mongoose. Okay, so here I'm just installing mongoose library. Okay, so now let's just create one function. Okay, let's name this as like something same as the file name db connect. Okay, so this is not going to return anything. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to import this mongoose. Okay, so first thing I'm just calling the connect on this and pass in the database URL. Okay, and here no specific things. Okay, fine. And then if it's successful and the callback thing, I'm just going to log a thing saying that uh, database connected successfully. Okay, so I'm just going to log this. So fine. Okay, after this, okay, if there is any issue, I'm just going to handle inside our catch block. Okay, so I'm just going to log the same for that too, so saying that our database connection error. Okay, fine, and just I'm going to exit here. Fine, so this is the DP connection, so check. Okay, fine. Now the things needed for us for validating our the environment, the setup. Okay, so let's just go to our index dot ts. Okay, just after this I'm just going to call this something like the validate env function which I have written. So this is like checking environment variables. Okay, so let's call this thing. Okay, and similarly the here establish db connection, which is this nothing but db connect. Okay, so now if I try to run this, we should see everything is as expected. Okay, so let me first build this. Sorry, okay, so now let's start this. Okay, there is fine. Here I have to there is an issue. Okay, it's not able to. Did I provide the wrong okay, here did I provide the wrong file name? Let's just check this thing. Okay, so the issue is here the again I have to provide the .env section, and also after compiling we are not seeing the .env inside the dist folder. So for that, let's add here the command to copy the .env file, okay, to slash dist slash dot env and then build this. Okay, so now let me run this. So yep, then now let's start this. Hopefully now it should be able to recognize things. Yep, see, now server is listening on port 8000 and database connected successfully. So the connections and the variables needed for us is successfully established. So now let's get started by trying to configure the route for our we can name it as something like image controller. So let's do that. So here inside our index.ts file, after this let's use the express.json. so pretty standard. Okay, middleware. Okay, fine. So after this again we should use the cores. Okay, so for now I'm just going to hello. So let's install this cores. Okay, let's import cores from cores. Okay, so and use this here, and I should import its types too. So okay, so here npm install types cores. Okay, fine. Now after this this is where the actual routes to whatever the things that we are planning to do. So first I'm going to rename this to like something like, let's say, health endpoint. Okay, since just you're checking here like server is running, so I'm just going to change this message here, server is running. Okay, fine. So after this, so I will just going to define the endpoint. So here I'm just going to here have this endpoint. Okay, so let's, you know what, let's make this of type application rather than express. Okay, so fine. Now here I wanted to just use this. Okay, and here let's define the endpoint for our image. Okay, so I'm just going to use this as endpoint is going to be slash api slash image, and let's define the router for this. Okay, so for that let's create a new folder inside source folder called routes. Okay, and I'm just going to define the file name as image dot route dot ts. Fine. So inside this let's define the endpoints. So first thing, I'm just going to import the router. from express. Okay, and let's have this router name as image router. Okay, so I'm just going to name this as image router, and this is going to have the two endpoints. One is to get all the images that we have in our database, and one is to generate the image given a prompt and the size things. Okay, so I'm just going to define this. One is the all endpoint, so which is going to fetch the all images. Okay, and the other is going to be the post thing, so let's name this endpoint as generate. Okay, so this is going to generate an image. So let's write the logic of them inside a controller. So I'm just going to define here new folder. So let's define this as controller folder, and I'm just going to create a new file called image.controller.ts. okay, so here let's write the function. So I'm just going to write the function first, the for fetching all images. So here I'm just going to make this as asynchronous. Okay, and this would have the two input params, request, okay, from our express, and the response. Okay, fine. So after this is not going to return promise of type void. So I'm just fine. So here first inside the try catch block, I'm just going to get the page from our query param. So this is going to be request dot query, and I'm going to look for the page thing, whatever the value is inside, or else I'm just going to defaultly give 1. Okay, and then the limit. So limit 2 I'm just going to get as a query param, so it's going to be limit thing, and by default I'm going to default it to the 8. Okay, and here the skip things. Okay, so let's give the skip. Okay, this is going to be the limit into the page -1. Okay, so simple. So page, fine. So this is how we're going to skip. Now let's get the images. So images, it's going to be again let's write the service, so where we are going to talk to our MongoDB database and get the things that we need for us. So before even that, we'll have to define the model. So let's define a new folder called models, and I'm just going to define the schema for it. So here schema.ts. okay, fine. So here I'm just going to define the interface for it. So I'm just going to name this as image model, just two things, prompt and image URL. So prompt, it's going to be of type string. Okay, and image URL, it's also going to be of type string. Okay, fine. So let's now create the image schema. So let's name this as image schema, and let's create a new object of the schema, and this is going to be of type image model. Okay, and as I said, this will have two things. One is a prompt, so this is of type string. So okay, so this is of type string. Okay, and we want this to be required. Okay, so require true. Okay, fine. Then the other thing is the image URL. Again, this is going to be of type string. Okay, and this also required, so I'm just setting this to the true value. Okay, fine. And the timestamps also I need, that is created and updated at things. So I'm just going to make this timestamps as true. Fine. And finally let's export this const image model is going to be our image So let's first import this model. Okay, and here it's going to be image model, and the name it's going to be images, and give the schema. Okay, fine. I'm just going to export this default image. So model is ready, so with the name images in our database. Okay, so now let's create a services which are going to talk to the models which we have just created. So I'm just going to define a new folder to just segregate the service. So service, and I'm just going to create a new file. Let's name this as image service.ts. Okay, fine. So as I said, so we'll have here the two services. One is to create an image, and one is to find all image. So let's first write the function which is going to find all our images. So here export const, I'm just going to name this as find all images. Okay, I'm just going to make this as asynchronous, and as I said, this we are going to send the limit, so that is how many we want the for this call, and then the skip, how many we wanted to skip. Fine. So yep, and this is going to return a promise of type, for now let's say it's of type unknown array. Okay, so here, okay, and here I'm just going to call the image dot find. Let's import the image. Okay, so here import image. Okay, I'm just going to call find, and skip the whatever the value we receive as input param, and I'm just going to limit to the value we receive inside our input param, and I'm just going to sort based on the created at. Okay, in descending order. So latest one will be showcased first, so it's going to be created at, and thing, and just execute this. Okay, fine. So this is how we are going to find all images. So since we are in the service thing, let's write the function to create an image as well. So here const, I'm just going to name this as create image. Okay, and let's make this also the asynchronous. Okay, and this is going to receive the image input, and so let's define this inside our something like types folder which we have already. So I'm just going to create a new file, and just going to name this as image.ts, and first I'm going to define the type for this, and defaultly exporting it. Okay, so let's name this as image input. So this is going to be nothing but the prompt and image URL, right? So these are the only two things that would be needing for our the create image service. Okay, so image and prompt and image URL. Okay, now similarly the output of our the image create image endpoint, as told already, same things, image URL prompt, and additionally we're going to add the created at and updated at things. Okay, so I'm just going to define that interface as well here. So interface image output, let's extend this the document from mongoose. Okay, so yep, so that we can get the created at and updated at. Okay, string, and prompt again it's going to be of type string, and created at it's going to be of type date, and similarly updated at it's going to be of type date. Fine. These are the two types. So now going back to our service, I'm just going to now use the models which we have just created. So input is going to be of type image input. Okay, and return is going to be promise of type this image output which we have defined. So I'm just going to have that. Okay, so let's import that too. So here image output. Okay, so fine. So here first let's get the image. Let's destructure the image URL and the prompt from our input parameter. So here it's going to be input. Okay, fine. So after that, let's create a new image model. So here it's going to be new image, and I'm just going to create an object of the image type. So image URL and prompt. Okay, fine. And I'm just going to return the new image dot save, I mean calling the save method, and finally returning the promise of type image outputs. Okay, so simple function, right? So just creating an object of image and saving it to our database. Okay, so create image is nothing but saving to our database, and finding it's going to retrieve all the data we have in our images table. Okay, so that's the service. Now here going to our controller. So inside this controller, I'm just going to call this service which we have just created, that is find all images, and here I'm just going to convert limit to the number and pass it as the param for this, and similarly the skip value. Fine, so this is going to give us the list of the images. Okay, after this let's handle the response. Okay, so for this rather than writing here separately, I would like to create a separate like utils kind of like response handler, which is going to handle the success created, any error, bad request and not found, those things. So it's going to be good. So if you keep it at one place, so I think it's better. So let me create here the new folder called utils. Okay, so this I'm going to create here a new file. I'm just going to name this as response handler dot ts. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to create, so I'm just going to name the same thing, response handler. So here we're going to handle as many things as possible. So let's make this method as static. So first thing, success. So this is going to have the input params, the response, okay, from express. Okay, fine. And the data, so which is going to be of type unknown, and if we want any message. Okay, fine. So return is also going to be of type unknown. Okay, fine. So here I'm just going to return here response dot status as 200, and in the JSON we are just going to send the success as true. Okay, and if any message added. Okay, and the code I'm just going to send it as 200, and the data. Okay, fine. So this is the success static method. Okay, similarly let's do for the other thing. So static, I'm going to name this as a created. Okay, so it's same thing, just the message that the code that will be returning would be different. So I'm just going to take it from here. Okay, so let's do the same thing. So let's rename this to created. Okay, and the status code it's going to be 201, and here also code it's going to be 201. Okay, so let's do the same for the server error. Okay, so I'm just going to rename this to server error. Okay, and the message that I want to add here is by default the something went wrong. Okay, so now the status code it's going to be 500, and here code is going to be 500, and remaining it's going to be and the success is going to be false. Okay, and remainings are same. Okay, and let's go for the bad request thing. So if the things needed for this are not provided. Okay, so kind of like wrong query params and those stuff. Okay, so bad request and message, I'm going to add the default message as same bad request. Okay, and the status code is going to be 400, and the success I'm just changing to the false. Okay, and the code is going to be 400. Okay, fine. So this is for the bad request. Similarly, let's write for the not found thing. So they're trying to call the endpoint which is not there okay, trying to access a resource which we have not created, okay. And this is not going to have any data input param, so okay. And message, fine. And the status code is going to be 404, okay. And the success, it's going to be false, and I'm just going to remove this data and change the code to 404, okay, fine. And then last thing, just the thing unauthorized, okay, fine. I'm just going to create this here also, no data. I'm just going to return the status code 401, okay, 401. And here I'm just changing the code to 401 and remove this data, okay, fine. And yep, so let's export this class so that we can make use of this. Export default the response handler, fine. So now going to our controller, I'm just going to use this class which I've just created. So here I'm just going to call this response handler dot success and pass in the response and the images, okay, fine. And if there is any error, I'm just going to handle inside the catch block, and I'm just going to call this server error and pass in the response and the error, okay, fine. So this is the fetching all images, okay. Similarly now the generate image function inside our controller, okay. So let me define that function. So I'm just naming this as generate image, okay. So let's make this as a synchronous and same it's going to receive two input params, request and response, okay. So here this is going to again return the promise of type void, okay, fine. And here from the body of this request, I'm going to destructure the prompt and the size variables. So let's get them. So here prompt and the size, so I'm just going to get this from our request body, okay. And we'll do some checks here. If there is no prompt, okay, or the prompt is empty, okay, so we are just going to return saying that, bad request, okay. That is like I'm just going to have this, and the message I'm going to say this is as prompt is required, okay, fine. And after this, let's get the image size, okay. So let's define one variable for that. So I'm just going to define the variable as image size, okay. And here I'm just going to use this switch. So its variable is size here, and here if it's small, and I'm just going to make the image size as here let's have the we'll use the type from our openai, that is create image request size enum, okay. So let me just import this, yep. So this is this one 256 cross 256, okay. Similarly we'll do the same for our medium and large, okay. So case medium, okay. And here the image size, it's going to be create image size enum 512 cross 512, okay. And break, okay, fine. And the now for the large value, okay. So image size, it's going to be 1024 cross 1024, and break, okay, fine. And then default I'm going to set the value to the small value, okay. So here, fine. So yep, so now based on this size param, we are going to decide the image size, okay. After the size is image size is evaluated, so inside the try catch block, let me get the response from our openai thing. So I'm just going to call here the openai, so which I have configured here, and I'm just going to call here create image function by passing in the prompt. Okay, and here the number of image I'm going to restrict to 1, and the size it's going to be our image size variable. Okay, fine. So here let me get the image from our response. So this is going to be ai response dot data of 0 dot url. Okay, so this is going to give us the image url. Okay, and now we'll do some validations here. If there is no image, I'm just going to say there is something server error. Okay, so here I'm just going to say it as add the thing and message I'm going to add is something like something went wrong. Okay, while generating image. Okay, so this is the thing I'll be showcasing in case if there is no image. Okay, then now we will upload this image to our Cloudinary. So I'm just going to get this url as like let's name this as uploaded image. Okay, so here I'm just going to use this Cloudinary object which we have configured. Okay, so here I'm going to call the uploader and upload the image. Okay, or if not, just going to give empty string. Okay, so now get the url from that. So here I'm just going to name this as image url upload image dot url dot no, replace if there is any http, I'm going to replace with https. Okay, so here http with https. Fine, so now we have the image url. Now we'll have to call our create image service. So I'm just going to call this create image service by passing in our image url and the prompt. Okay, so now this will be successfully saved in our db, and after this I'm just going to say that created. Okay, so pass in this and the image url. Okay, fine, and if there is any error we are going to handle inside the catch block, and let's make this error is of type unknown. Okay, and I'm just going to here say it's server error and pass in the response and the error. Okay, fine, and so the logic that is needed for us to handle for generating image and fetching all images is done. So now I'll go to the route where we need this controller methods. Okay, so so for this all endpoints, so the things that we would be calling is the fetch all images. Okay, and for generate I'm just going to call this generate image from our controller. Okay, so now the endpoint thing needed for handling the logic and all it's done. So going to our index dot ts, so here now api slash image, it's going to have the image router. So here let me import this image router. Fine, now if we try to check the endpoints and passing the data that is needed for those endpoints, we should be able to get the list of the data from the this all endpoint and generate. It is supposed to generate a url for us. Okay, so let's check it out. So let me open the postman. Okay, so first thing, so let me open this postman. So until so here let me, yep, here I have configured the endpoint here already. So if you see this is for generating. Okay, so for api slash image generate, the body should be the prompt and the size. Okay, so let me try to make a call to this endpoint now. So here Okay, did I stop the server? Let's check this thing. Second. No, so it is running. Image router / generate. Okay, let me rerun this. So first let me build this. Now let me start this. Okay, now let's check. Hopefully it should. Now let me call this. Yep, so we got this image URL from the Cloudinary. So we generated image using the OpenAI and then uploaded that and returned that URL here. Okay, so let's do the same for the getting all images. I'm just going to add here one more request. So let me take the same here, the URL. Okay, so here I'm just going to pass in here /all and it's going to be get, and by default we have the page query set to 1 or under limit set to 8. So let's not provide anything, so let's just try to get the details from our DB. Yep, so if you see these are the details from our MongoDB database. So this endpoint is also working, so the endpoints needed for us is ready. So let's consume this in our front-end application. Okay, so this is it for the APIs building for this application. So just simple two endpoints, and the things how we handle it, so it went good, fine. So now in the next video we'll get started with the front end by consuming this API and build all the components needed for us to render that page. Okay, thank you so much.